Hi, this is TapCat, and today I want to talk a little bit about the RNG in XCOM 2. Now, in parts 1 and 2 of my ongoing War of the Chosen series, I had just poked very gentle fun at the fact that we had missed a couple of, high percentage shots. And then in part 3 on the mission against the Lost, I definitely got a little bit salty because I felt like we were missing a lot of shots and particularly higher percentage shots. And so as the mission went on, in particular, I felt a little gypped and I let that be known. And so as I did earlier in the campaign in a different situation, I kind of want to revisit that whole take. And partly I want to test whether my perception was accurate. And then whether it was or whether it wasn't, let's dive into that a little bit more. So let's start off by doing the most high-level comparison I can possibly do. I went back and looked at every single shot that I took in part 3, and we had just over an 84% chance to hit. Now, I should add, I've excluded all of the 100% shots because obviously I hit those. Bringing those in here would just really throw off all of our numbers. So we had an 84% chance to hit on average, and I made 75% of them. Now, 75%, for the astute among you, you will realize is less than 84. And I would say it's not less by a trivial amount, but at the same time, I'm not going to lie, it felt like a much bigger disparity than that while I was playing. Now, in particular, my Grenadier, who we had recently renamed Chemical, Chemical had an 82% chance, roughly, to hit on her shots and landed 60. So this is a much bigger gap. We went from around 9%, gap there for the team as a whole to over 20% for Chemical. That did not surprise me because of the fact that, wow, it was really painful taking her turn. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. One thing, though, that I do want to point out, we only took 10 shots with her, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that's significant later. Now, this chart may be a little overwhelming for people, and don't worry about it. If you look at this and it just looks like, numbers salad to you, that's okay. I'm going to talk about the few things that actually matter from here. I just thought I would put a bunch of detail on for the relatively few people probably who will care to pause and really look at it. So what I wanted to do is break down, going from here's everything thrown into the same pool. Let's start breaking it down into little clusters because that'll give us a little bit better read on what really happened for the mission. So what I did is I said, okay, well, let's say if I take 70% chance to hit plus or minus 2%, 75% plus or minus 2%, and so on. And that allowed me to group similar things and get a little clearer idea of, where we did well and where we didn't. So the two spots that I want to kind of highlight on the negative side, we took 5 shots that were right around 70% chance to hit. We landed 40% of those. We took another 5 shots that had roughly an 80% chance to land, and we got 40% of those. So literally half what we would maybe expect to hit. Now I'm going to point out one more time, we only took 5 shots each for those 2 categories. And again, more on that in a minute. Now I'm going to point out one other one, and this is a little bit more positive. Honestly, there's more than one positive in here, but the most interesting to me is shots that were right around 85%. We landed 84.6. So really no difference. It's essentially a wash. Also, the very highest categories, 95 plus or minus 2%, we were right on there. And the two 98% shots that we took, we hit both of those. So what does all this mean? Okay, well, I would say that as a team, we actually did better than I felt like we were doing while I was playing the mission. The one soldier who maybe kind of lived down to what I felt like was going on was my Grenadier Chemical. And maybe even, she was doing slightly better than I felt like, but you can fairly say that was pretty bad. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, why did it feel so crushing when I was in the mission itself? Because it did. And based on the comments, by the way, like a lot of you guys also felt like, holy cow, you're missing so many shots. And I think there's a few things at work here, so I just want to talk about that. So first of all, human beings are not great at really like processing the whole concept of probability and outcomes and how we perceive them versus the reality. This is called perception bias. You can Google it. It's a very well-established and researched psychological phenomenon. In the case of XCOM, what that means is that we tend to dismiss shots that we make from our memory as soon as they happen. This is just what we expect, and it's not significant to us. Whereas when we miss particularly a high percentage shot, it's almost traumatic in a way, and it really sticks in our heads. Now, let me give you a really concrete example of this. In part 1, I missed a 99% chance shot. I still remember that. Okay. And a number of you do too, because you mentioned it in the comments. I will tell you even much more in the distant past, in all the time that I've been playing XCOM 2, I have missed 2 99% shots. I remember that. Okay. That's kind of crazy. I can't tell you how many 99% shots I've made. I can't even begin to guess at that because they don't stick. They don't mean anything to me. It was just automatic in my mind. So when it's not, it's like, holy crap. But when you take it very literally, what does 99% means? It means that over a long period of time, you should hit about 99 out of 100. And another way of saying that is you're going to miss 1 out of 100. I have probably taken a couple of hundred of those shots. Okay, let's keep it moving. So why again did I perceive my run of luck to be so bad? I think a lot of it had to do with my Grenadier missing an 87% shot right out of the gate. So that's, again, not 99, but that's high, right? You expect to make that shot. She missed it. That was then followed up by a pretty good little run of missed shots. I have the, kind of detailed history on a spreadsheet. But basically our squad at one point missed something like, 6 out of 9 or 5 out of 8 or something like that. I'd have to go back and look at it again. But it was a very punishing run and it was very early in the mission. And so again, I think when we talk about the difference between perception and reality, what happens is your perception kind of gets rooted and set early on when you have a run of luck that bad. Now, let me just add one thing. After that 87% chance that I missed, most of those others, like they were significantly weaker shots, maybe more like 70% and stuff like that. Well, you're going to miss 1 in 3 of those, so it's not quite as remarkable that you would miss one, right? But coming off the 87, every shot I missed after that felt really painful. It's not like I was spraying, 25% chance shots or 50 or anything like that. But again, like these were not AAA, almost guaranteed to make either. So I feel like those things had a lot to do with why it felt like we were going just so cold. Another thing I want to point out, I'm going to kind of move on from that. We literally only missed one shot as high as 88%. I took 15 shots that were 88 or higher, like between 88 and 98, and I missed one. So again, if you just do the math, you can say, well, that seems pretty reasonable, right? At least for that cluster of shots. Another thing I want to point out is I would have had to have made, this is the difference, okay? This whole thing of, Jesus, I missed more than I should have, right? If I had made 4 more shots over the course of the mission, then I would have hit the same percentage as that average chance to hit. So that's it. 4 extra misses out of all of that. Another thing I want to point out is, despite the quote extra misses, I only got wounded 1 time. And I have to be honest about this. I did not get wounded because I missed shots. The Lost who hit me, I never shot at. I got hit because first I got greedy when I moved my Grenadier over by the warehouse. I thought, you know what? There's a few over there, and I know they're going to come running after me as we're trying to leave with the VIP. Maybe I can kill 1 or 2 of them. So I moved closer to melee enemies to kill 1 or 2 guys that weren't anywhere near me to begin with. Then, when I didn't get any because she missed again, and it was time to back away and start heading towards the exit, what did I do? I moved once, and then instead of taking the second move to catch up to the rest of the party, I reloaded. And I knew, but I did lose sight for a minute. I lost sight of the fact that there had been a Lost standing very close to her. And I didn't fire at him, but I had kind of been on the fence about moving there in the first place. And then I did think about moving that extra move, dashing basically. But I thought, I really want more ammo in case she needs to fire. I just feel like I got greedy. I got greedy when I moved by that warehouse. I got greedy when I moved away from the warehouse. That's why she got wounded. And that's that. So I would have had a flawless mission, even with these, extra misses or whatever you want to call it, that one run in particular that was so troublesome. I still would have come out of it with a flawless mission if I had just been a little bit more disciplined at a key moment in the mission. So, I probably will make this a recurring theme in this playthrough of it's super easy to blame the game, but don't. Look, I don't think it's the end of the world if you get a little salty while you're playing, but you want to stick to your knitting. You want to focus on taking care of business. The other thing I'm going to talk about just really quickly, I mentioned before how the categories that we did worst in, so like the 70% chance shots, the 80% chance shots, where, we only landed 40% of those. But it is significant that we only took 5 in each of those brackets. And it is also significant that in the category where we had the most shots, at 85% range, we had 13. It was just dead on. This goes down to what they would call a small sample size. And this is probably a term you hear a lot, but for those of you who may not know, I'm just going to put this in really plain English. Think of it this way. If I flipped a coin twice and it came up heads both times, and I said, well, this coin is obviously bad. It's broken. Every time I flip it, it comes up heads. You would already know. You don't have to know anything about statistics. You would be able to say, well, geez, like, I don't know. I don't know that you can really make that kind of declaration based on flipping it twice. Like, it isn't always going to be perfectly in sync that it's heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails. Of course, it's going to come up heads twice in a row sometimes, or tails twice in a row. That's a small sample size, literally. And by the same token, if I flip that coin 1,000 times and I come out and let's say it's 800 heads and 200 tails, well, then you might say, that doesn't sound right. And 1,000 times will feel a lot more significant than 2, right? Even though in my first example, it did the same thing 100% of the time. And then the second one, I'm saying it only happens 80% of the time when you would expect 50-50. But you'd say, listen, when you do it 1,000 times, I'm going to put a lot more weight on that. Any kind of analysis of outcomes is going to work the same way, including in XCOM. So when you take 5 shots and it doesn't come out exactly on par with what, that percentage chance said it would be, of course it doesn't. You don't even... there's no reason to expect it to. So I could go a lot deeper on this, but I think I want to keep this video from going, really long. If it's something that you'd like me to maybe go into more in depth and do a separate video outside of this series, that's fine. Let me know in the comments. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it here for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.